Hey there, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive deep into a part of the body you use literally every single day, but probably don't give a second thought to. We're taking a guided tour of the surprisingly complex and super important patella, which, you probably just call the kneecap.
Okay, so let's kick things off with the absolute basics. Patella is just the official anatomical name for your kneecap. It's that little flattened triangular bone you can feel right there at the front of your knee. Sounds simple enough, right? But trust me, this is where it starts to get really interesting.
And boom, right away, we hit our first surprise. The patella is what's called a sesamoid bone. So what on earth does that mean? Well, a sesamoid bone is any bone that's completely embedded inside a tendon. Most of them are tiny. Think about the little ones in your thumb or at the base of your big toe. But the patella? Oh, it's the undisputed champion, the absolute heavyweight, the largest sesamoid bone in your whole body.
All right, so with that little fun fact in our back pocket, let's officially start our tour and really get to know this unique piece of anatomy. So, picture this. If you could actually hold a kneecap, you'd feel that it's got this obvious triangular shape. The pointy end, which we call the apex, faces down toward your shin, and the wider, flatter part, the base, faces up toward your thigh. And this setup, it's not random. It is absolutely crucial for how your knee works.
Okay, here's a fun little puzzle for you. Let's say you just found a kneecap. How in the world would you know if it's a left one or a right one? I mean, it's not as easy as it sounds, but there is a really cool little trick that anatomists use, and you can totally picture it.
It's called the tabletop trick. So, if you put the kneecap down on a table with its smooth backside facing down, and you point the pointy end away from you, here's the magic part. It's not going to lie flat. It'll just naturally tilt over to one side. And get this, it always tilts toward the side of the body it came from. So a left patella will tilt to the left, a right patella tilts to the right. Pretty neat, huh?
Okay, so now that we know what it looks like and which side it's from, let's get into the why. Why is this bone even there? What's its job?
All right, here's the number one thing you need to know. Your kneecap is basically a pulley. It's sitting right inside the huge tendon of your quadriceps muscle. That's the big one on the front of your thigh. By pushing that tendon forward, away from the knee joint, it gives your muscle way more leverage when you straighten your leg. I mean, without that little bone, trying to stand up, kick a ball, or even just run would be so much harder. It's a total game changer for our leg strength.
But for this pulley to work right, it has to stay perfectly centered, right? And that's where the muscles come in. It's like a finely tuned balancing act. You've got the vastus lateralis pulling it to the outside and the vastus medialis pulling it back to the inside. And then you have these other tissues, the retinacula, giving it extra support. It's this constant, perfect tug of war that keeps your kneecap gliding exactly where it's supposed to.
And if you look closer, the kneecap itself is just brilliantly designed. Its front and back surfaces are completely different. The front is all rough so the tendon could get a really good grip, but the back is almost totally covered with this thick, slippery cartilage. It even has this vertical ridge down the middle that fits perfectly into a groove on your thigh bone, your femur. Kind of like a key in a lock. It's this perfect fit that lets it slide up and down so smoothly when you bend your knee.
So yeah, it's a real marvel of natural engineering. But with all that intricate machinery and all the stress we put on it, that leads us to a pretty important question. What happens when it all goes wrong?
And that's what we're tackling next. Let's talk about what happens when kneecaps go bad, specifically dislocation and fractures.
So get this, our bodies have this, let's call it a design quirk. Because of the way our thigh bone is angled, the kneecap naturally wants to get pulled to the outside of your leg, laterally. So the big question is, why isn't it just popping out of place all the time?
Well, it's because our body has three amazing heroes that leap into action to stop that from happening. First, the outer edge of that groove on the thigh bone is built up like a little bony wall, a physical barrier. Second, you have that vastus medialis muscle we talked about, which gives a strong pull inward. And third, there's a tough band of tissue called the medial patellar retinaculum that basically tethers it, pulling it inward too. It's this incredible team effort that keeps everything in line.
Okay, but what about breaking it? Turns out there are two main ways to fracture your patella. The first way is kind of what you'd expect, a direct, hard hit, like falling right on your knee or hitting it on a dashboard. That can just shatter the bone. But the second way? This one's wild. If your quad muscle contracts super suddenly and violently, it can actually pull the kneecap apart, usually in a nice, clean, horizontal crack.
Now, healing a broken kneecap is a whole different ballgame compared to, say, a broken arm.
And here's why. Most of our bones are wrapped in this thin sleeve called the periosteum, which is loaded with blood vessels and is absolutely essential for healing. But the kneecap, because it's a sesamoid bone, just doesn't have this wrapper. And without that direct blood supply, getting those broken pieces to knit back together is incredibly tricky.
Okay, so we've covered what it is, what it does, and how it breaks. For our last chapter, let's rewind the clock all the way back to the beginning and check out its really cool origin story.
Believe it or not, when you're born, you don't really have a kneecap. At least, not a bony one. It's just a little piece of soft cartilage. Then, somewhere between 3 and 6 years old, little spots of bone start to appear inside it. And then, like pieces of a puzzle, they all start to fuse together into one solid bone. By the time you hit puberty, the job's done, and you've got a fully formed patella.
But what if they don't? What if those little bone centers never quite finish the job? Well, for a decent number of people, that's exactly what happens. One or more of those pieces fails to fuse with the main bone. This leads to something called a bipartella patella, which is just a fancy way of saying a kneecap that's in two parts. So, if you're a doctor looking at an x-ray, how do you know if you're seeing this harmless condition or a painful fresh fracture? Well, a bipartella patella has smooth, rounded edges where the pieces meet. A fracture has sharp, jagged edges. Plus, if you have a bipartella patella in one knee, you very often have it in the other one too.
And all this leads to a pretty wild final thought. A bipartite patella almost never causes any pain or problems. Most people who have one only find out by accident when they get an x-ray for something else entirely. So think about it. Could your kneecap right now actually be in two pieces and you just have no idea? Kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it?